A lot's been going on in Europe, and I need to talk to y'all about it.
Violé et assassiné dans le bois de Boulogne. Mathis, 15 ans, tué à coups de couteau lors d'une altercation. Elias, 14 ans, tué à la machette lors d'un racket. Axel Dorier, 22 ans, renversé et traîné sur environ 800 mètres. Mélanie Lemay, 25 ans, fauchée lors d'un refus d'obtempérer. Kylian Binard, 17 ans, poignardé mortellement à la sortie d'une boîte de nuit. Irina Zarutska, 23 ans, poignardée à mort dans le métro.
Those are deceased victims. People have been killed. White people have been killed all over the world, um, all over the Western world. By non-whites, not just Africans, not one particular group. Um, Quite a lot of Africans and quite a lot of Arabs for sure. But it is in general whites that have been killed by non-whites that are of the nationalities, the migrant nationalities that have been flooding to the various European countries. The world is willing racism. It's not white people either. Okay, the rest of the world is willing racism back into our society. Now, there are those who will argue this has been going on for a long time, but the intensity has increased on an order of magnitude every year for like the past 10 years. And I feel for these women, and I feel for the victims' families. I worry about my own friends who are white. I worry about their children. I didn't want to live in a world where killing some other person in your community, some other um, citizen, not because of war. We're just killing somebody because, of their skin color or heritage. I didn't want to live in a world like that. And I certainly don't want the children to have to live in a world like that. Children now and that are yet to be born. Um, in the United States, it truly pains me to see very clearly how worried kids like 5 years younger than me going through, obviously they'd be adults now, but people like 5 years younger than me would have to go through school all of elementary school, all of high school with some amount of fear um, about being the victim of a school shooting. And I never had to deal with that. I guess I was just born just a little bit before all that stuff became really commonplace. So when I was growing up, it existed, it could happen, but it wasn't something that happened every single day like it does and has since like 2021. And now in 2026, it's escalated to a point where if a white child is going to school with a Muslim peer or a black peer, um, any non-white peer, that child could reasonably be in fear every day that they might get beat up, bullied, or killed because they are white. And I think we as a country need to turn that around. We need to turn that around in the world. But what you have here is not just a solemn ceremony honoring the dead, paying respect to the dead, remembering the dead, innocent lives taken by mentally unstable people and a ideology that facilitates and encourages mentally ill people to act with violence on behalf of that political ideology. What you have here is much more than a solemn ceremony. You have a warning, and I want you to watch this again, and I want you to think about history. When you watch this,
Violée et assassinée dans le bois de
what
Boulogne.
are these women doing?
Mathis, 15 ans, tué à coups de couteau lors d'une altercation.
They're in dresses,
Elias, 14
they're
ans,
laying
tué
flowers,
à la machette lors d'un racket.
and they are
Axel
naming
Dorier,
the
22 ans,
names of
renversé et traîné sur
fallen
environ 800 mètres.
loved ones.
Mélanie Lemay, 25 ans, fauchée lors d'un refus d'obtempérer. Kylian Binard, 17 ans.
This looks like something that would happen during World War One, or after some horrible, European atrocity or massacre somewhere, right?
Des mortellement à la sortie d'une boîte de nuit. Irina Zarutska, 23
Honoring the
ans,
fallen
poignardée
heroes.
à mort dans le métro.
This is a warning. This is the last thing that Europeans do before enough is enough. Generally, this is the last thing that, right, whites do, Europeans do. Before enough is enough. And this is why I asked you to remember history. I want you to remember who conquered the world. What group of people did that? And the rest of the world seems to have forgotten that, seems to become a bit overconfident. When the girl bosses start donning dresses and dressing modestly and start laying flowers in front of a banner to honor their dead, the men in that community are preparing for war. And in European history, many times it was to defend themselves against some other, European nation. Europe has a long, right, history of you know, wars between themselves within the continent, right? Um, just like every region in the world, or, some atrocity happening to, someone of, a particular European ethnic group in another European country, and then they're going back and attacking. Either way, what we have here is a warning. And for the people who are here actually at this event, this is not what this means. This is not a threat. Um, but this is human nature. And this is how all peoples um, prepare themselves for survival and signal to each other. And it's a completely unconscious thing. It's not something that is even necessarily controlled. It's a community consciousness kind of thing. The Europeans and the whites have had enough. They're getting very close to that point. And they have been left with no, they've been backed into a corner and they have no escape but forward. They are showing that they are aware of what's going on, that their homelands are under attack and are being invaded, and that this will no longer go unnoticed. And with this particular remembrance, this is a non-violent event. But the message is clear that these hostile actions by other nations, groups of people, organizations, etc., will not continue to go unnoticed and will be responded to. And that same day, maybe the day after, within a few days of each other, within a few days of that ceremony honoring the dead in France, this happened in Belfast. Right? A Sudanese man, attempted to behead a white Irish citizen in his own country. The Irish man, it's not the Sudanese man. It's in his own country, foreigner. is straddled atop of him, trying to carve his neck out. This action here is brutal, it's barbaric, it's savage, it's impulsive, it's poorly thought out. When the response comes, it will be brutal, it will be fierce, but it will be decisive. It will be organized, it will be thought out. Millions must go. In Europe, yes, but as an American, the same goes for here. Millions must go. Millions must go. Too many $500 Visa gift cards given out to migrants. Too many. Because my nephews, who are children and needed assistance, didn't get any. They didn't get any. A lot of homeless veterans in the United States. But many, many states and many cities paid 4- and 5-star hotels millions of dollars to house migrants for free. And a lot of them have been killing and people and raping women here too. So this resonates with me a lot. Millions must go on both sides of the Atlantic.
Listen, I don't like doing videos like this, and I hope I never have to do one again. But look at this photo right here. This is a photo of an illegal immigrant towering over a man after attempting to decapitate him in the middle of the street in my hometown, Belfast, in Ireland. And already I'm seeing people coming.
Imagine that. Now imagine that happened in your neighborhood. Like imagine that happened at, somewhere that you live like a 4 or 5 mile drive away. Imagine that just happened in your community, like 4 or 5 miles from where you live. Whether you were in Europe or United States, like like some like somebody that you know that knows somebody that knows a person that died a week ago was killed by somebody who was undocumented. You don't know what their race was, you just know that they were undocumented. And the police aren't giving out information. Imagine that happened somewhere in your neighborhood, whether you live on the European continent or in the United States.
To the immigrants' defense. They're saying, oh, apparently he has mental health issues. There's already these excuses coming around. Now, of course, all of this is allegedly, so I don't get myself into trouble. But people are defending them. Irish people are defending them. Listen, guys, this is real now. This isn't going on Twitter and just posting a status or whatever people do on Twitter. I don't have it. This is actually a man on a street in Belfast having his head removed. Luckily, people came in to stop it and helped out. And hopefully, we don't know yet. We don't know whether he's dead or not. But hopefully, they've saved him. Because
I hope that man makes a full recovery. I believe he did survive. I'm not sure what his current condition is. Like if he's still kind of on, if it's still a toss up whether he's actually going to live through this or not. But I hope he makes it through, and I hope he makes a full recovery.
the Irish came through and took a bat to the guy's head and stopped him. It's unlike a lot of other countries who wouldn't have the balls to do that and just stand there and film. That's what we are. And don't forget that. We've let these immigrants come in. They're decapitating our own. And if people out here, our own, defending it. What are we was this moral compass during the Troubles? I don't see any Protestants going, oh, well, the IRA bombers. Yeah, do you know what? Maybe he had mental health issues. Maybe Jerry Adams had mental health issues. Where's that? Where's all the Catholics then coming out and going, here, do you know what it is? Bloody Sunday. Maybe them soldiers had mental health issues. Where's that? But now, no, an illegal immigrant comes in, attempts to decapitate a man's head in the middle of the street, and there's glue bags. It's the most boogaloo thing I've ever heard in my life. He's got mental health issues. We shouldn't get angry at him. He's trying to cut someone's fucking head off in the street. It's nuts. Guys, this is real life now. This is what we voted for. When are people going to wake up?
And a few nights ago, the organizing has already begun. Now, in that context, would you say that this is racism and terrorism, or would you say that this is self-defense? Now, in my opinion, I think this is self-defense. I think this is self-defense in a country that refuses to defend your own. Period. See, these migrants don't know nor care to know about any European history, so they don't understand. They just get over to that continent and think that they can just pull a knife on somebody and attack them, and that nobody in Britain has guns because guns aren't allowed. Nah, they gonna find out. They gonna find out real quick. Just because guns aren't allowed don't mean that they don't exist. And you know, Britain and Ireland were fighting not too long ago with guns. But like I said, the migrant isn't gonna understand that. He's gonna get there in 2026 and think Britain is a completely unarmed country. The UK is a completely unarmed country. But this Sudanese guy in Belfast, his kin are gonna find out real quick. Real quick. What it really is out there. When Irish or any of these Europeans have to protect themselves, they're gonna find out real quick.
The MP for that area of North Belfast is John Finucane. John Finucane is also on record of representing these immigrants, saying we must help these immigrants, we must relocate these immigrants in that area. Well, Mr. John Finucane MP, what about now, Mr. Finucane? Where are you now? When one of your own constituencies, maybe a man that voted for you, is on the street with an African on top of him trying to saw his head off. Where are you, Finucane? Where are you? Where is the Sinn Féin leadership? Where are you guys? Where are you? Yous are sitting in the refugee centres worried about racism because this attack might increase racism in the area. I wonder why. That's where Finucane and the rest of the Sinn Féin rats and the Alliance rats are right now as we speak. They're not in the New Lodge trying to help and give comfort to the people who witnessed such a brutal and vicious attack. No. They're more worried about people reacting in a bad way, with hurty words, with tweets and things like that against the immigrants. Jim Dowson here from the Knights Templar International. I'm inviting you today to join this order, a real order, the only real order with bricks and the MP for that area of North Belfast is John Finucane. John Finucane is also on record of representing these immigrants, saying we must help these immigrants, we must relocate these immigrants in that area. Well, Mr. John Finucane MP, what about now, Mr. Finucane? Where are you now? When one of your own constituencies, maybe a man that voted for you, is on the street with an African on top of him trying to saw his head off. Where are you, Finucane? Where are you? Where is the Sinn Féin leadership? Where are you guys? Where are you? These are sitting in the refugee centres worried about racism because this attack might increase racism in the area. I wonder why. That's where Finucane and the rest of the Sinn Féin rats and the Alliance rats are right now as we speak. They're not in the New Lodge trying to help and give comfort to the people who witnessed such a brutal and vicious attack. No. They're more worried about people reacting in a bad way, with hurty words, with tweets and things like that against the immigrants. Jim Dawson.
Well said. And soon enough, the leaders, I believe, soon enough, the leaders, um, certainly in Europe, I don't know about the United States, but in Europe, the leaders and representatives responsible for these policies that has caused so much death, so many rapes, actual generational trauma. And it hasn't stopped. The generational trauma is continuing to be added to the white diaspora, if you will. I don't really know, just the white race. And only when the generational trauma stops being inflicted can they then begin to heal from it. So as this continues to go on, it will only get worse and worse. And there will be no healing from it until it stops. Now in Europe, as this man was saying, he pointed out the exact MP for the area of Belfast that this man, this Irish man, was attacked and almost killed. We don't know yet if he's even going to survive, right? So we will see the representatives of these policies be held more and more to account and related more and more directly to having facilitated or caused these events, as they should be held to account. This Belfast stabbing, beheading really, attempted beheading, happened only days after the conviction and sentencing of Henry Nowak's killer, right? Only weeks after the discovery or the government revealing the details of Henry Nowak's case to the public in Britain. Um, in the wake of the killing of Austin Metcalf, Irina Zarutska, and Charlie Kirk. And I argued Charlie Kirk as well, even though he was also killed by a white person. that Charlie Kirk was also killed because he was white. Because I do not believe that the society that we live in, they would have killed a black man for saying the same thing as Charlie Kirk had said. There are many black men who, and women, who agree with Charlie Kirk. Not radical at all. He's fairly moderate individual. And there's a lot of older black people and younger black people, but a lot of older black people reasonably would have seen eye to eye with Charlie Kirk. And, you know, any black man who said the same things as Charlie Kirk, in fact, there have been people like Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell hasn't been killed yet. He said very similar things to what Charlie Kirk has said. They've used the same statistics, the same references at times. So in the wake of all that, I'm surprised whites have not retaliated earlier in any way. They still haven't. There hasn't been any revenge killings or anything like that.
I'm still sick to my stomach. This is not an incident. This is genocidal violence. This is what genocidal violence looks like, ladies and gentlemen. Enough is enough. It has been too much. We cannot live like this, and we don't have to live like this.
That's all there is to it. Is all there is to it. And I would suggest that non-European ethnic groups take heed what that woman is saying. I know this video has already been discussed and shared, but I really can't say it any better myself.
These dirty third world fucks slaughtering our people. And I'm going to say, I'll repeat myself, raping our children and women, attacking our people on a daily basis. Yeah? Can you not see through this madness now? This ain't nothing to do with the people coming in on the boats. The third world dirty bastards anyway. They're not like us. It's our establishment, our government allowing them in to fucking get up to no good, to wind us up. Where are they going to throw them first? Who's been down in fucking history for being absolutely nuts? Yeah? And I mean that with every respect. The Irish. Let's flood them with it first. Let's wind them up. Let's set them off. They'll get it started. And then you flooded Scotland. Scotland is the migrant capital of the fucking world right now. They're going to go next. I always thought it was going to be a different order. But now the way I look at it, it's going to be Ireland, Scotland, England and Wales because we're left with no fucking choice. How can we wind them up? How can we cause civil war? By putting a load of fucking murdering migrant bastards into their countries, flooding them with the bastards. They'll attack the kids and women and men. They'll do a good job of it and wind them all up. England, Ireland, Scotland, in Wales. We need to unite. We need to stay connected because the establishment, the traitor bastards they are, compromised, corrupt governments, you murdering bastards.
I think that's all that needs to be said. Same thing happens in the United States. These black on white killings. They are encouraged, subliminally facilitated by our government, media, etc., because pretty much every organization in the United States, whether it's for profit, whether it's a government organization, it's a nonprofit, pretty much all of them have foreign interests. They're owned by somebody, even if it's owned by a private individual and they happen to be a United States citizen. You could still consider that a foreign interest because that single person is a single person with specific interests, and they are not representative of the interests of the entire United States of America, any of its people, none of that. That person is concerned about their interests. So that's a foreign interest to the United States, essentially. The organizations that are supposed to represent the interests of the country, which means its people, have basically all been outsourced. They're basically all just controlled by foreign interests at this point, or interests that are not in line with the benefit of the American people. And so essentially, the governments in Europe and the governments in the United States have been soft hijacked in a way, like a coup without a coup. And their strategy is just to create derision with real events. They're basically very strict in certain places, certain areas of life, such as speaking out about these things or trying to raise awareness about them or resist them in some manner, or exposing, corruption, what have you. They're strict about things like that. But when it comes to things that lead to the deaths of and the rapes of certain groups of people, they just they generally encourage it, turn a blind eye when crimes are committed, and allow it to happen to keep keep the heat off of themselves. And it's just a vile thing to do, but it's very effective because when a murder occurs, it has to be addressed. Like, I'm not dismissing any of this as, oh, they're just trying to keep you distracted. Like, no, these are real people that died, that were killed. And, these are real events that took place that hurt real people. Real people are not here anymore because of these things. And so necessarily those events have to be addressed when they occur, those crimes, those injustices. They have to be addressed. And all the effort that we as common people make in addressing these issues, the elites, the ruling class, whatever you want to call them, continue on with their plan of which we probably no one knows fully, but certainly includes enriching themselves at our expense. And they know that the more time that we spend on addressing issues that must be addressed, that are of immediate concern, the more time that they have to spend not being the focus of those same efforts. Because if we weren't worried about race and such, and you know what. So if we just identity in general, right? If we weren't so concerned about who has what identity over here in what group and da 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 da, then our focus would be on, well, why do you tax us so much? And our roads aren't maintained, and our water isn't purified, and um, you know, why is the electricity so expensive now compared to what it was 5 years ago? We'd be focused on those kind of things and putting efforts into figuring those things out and getting them fixed and pressuring our representatives or leaders to fix them or prioritize those issues and address them and resolve them. But instead, you know, somebody gets decapitated or a migrant walks in, or not, I guess not a migrant, but some non-white person who's angry at white people walks into a dance school and elementary school age girls with a knife. Um, or you have a Henry Nowak or an Austin Metcalf or an Arena Zarutska. And those things seem to happen spontaneously. And they may happen spontaneously, they probably do. But every time one of these things happens, the government, the media, all these large apparatuses that have some amount of an effect over the daily life of most people, their strategy is just to milk that as long as possible so that they can continue to enrich themselves and consolidate their control over the country at your expense. I don't want to see civil war. I don't want to see war in the West. I don't want to see like an insurgency anywhere or any of the suffering and tragedy that comes with all that. But I am also very skeptical that the migration problem across the West, in Europe and in the United States, can be solved through civil discourse at this point. That is not only due to the violent events and incidents, attacks that have happened, but also because the migrant communities on the whole have shown that essentially anytime they come to a Western country in large numbers, as soon as they are given the opportunity to participate in politics and hold office, that they only issue legislation, tracts, and all of that. They only do that for the benefit of their own ethnicity. They only look at their own ethnicity, their own migrant community as constituents, and completely ignore the native and host population and citizenry. And So on the one hand, many migrants are just too violent to engage in civil public discourse to resolve their differences with other groups when they have emigrated to another country, but also they lack the ability to act with any common decency when afforded political office. I.e., you don't just get political office and then use that to benefit only yourself and your kids. Don't understand that, and I suppose for them it's just a given that politics is tribalism, and you only um, make laws that benefit your group or hurt another group so that your group benefits. And that's simply not how a Western civilization or government operates. And so these migrants would be better off in their own countries where they understand their own politics and can conduct their politics accordingly over there. And just let the European natives alone and the American whites alone. I don't really think that's going to happen. I think that even if there is a large upheaval within the political leadership in these Western countries, and they did decide to listen to the people, and okay, millions must go, and we are going to enact that and facilitate that, and we are going to start to do mass deportations, essentially. I think that the migrants will only become more violent from there, and that will lead to more violence, potentially a civil war. That's what I think is more than likely going to happen should we continue down this road. Ultimately, I hope that the Europeans and that the Americans, I hope we can keep our homelands.
In Northern Ireland, unrest continued throughout Belfast throughout the night, with most of the more kinetic phases of the evening focusing around arson attacks on migrant housing projects throughout the city. Several dozen different sites and residential structures were burned down, and throughout the afternoon the riots have continued around the city. Analysts comment. According to local reports, nobody was killed or stabbed during the night, so as of this morning at least, the Chicago way has not been relied upon for conflict resolution throughout the city just yet. All things considered, the city has probably gotten off lightly so far, considering the gravity and circumstances of the case that started all of this. However, as of this report, the second night of rioting has begun, and unrest looks to be in the forecast for the next few days.
Action, reaction. This is a natural reaction. Migrant emigrate to country, migrant pillage country. Natives grow tired of this. Natives run migrants out of natives' homelands. Natural reaction. Restore Europe, save America. That is all.